Hi, welcome back to Check Your Money. For those who don't follow Instagram or the Latinx financial community on it, you are missing out. Earlier this year, I made my way past the circle of people that I personally know and made my way into a circle of people, who are just as obsessed with personal finance as I am. Actually, probably a lot more. One of those people are Soledad, who manages Wealth para Todos on Instagram. Soledad is the chief financial officer of a small startup called Puro Party Paulinos, aka her family. Her motto is Todo con tiempo, which means everything with time. She shares financial literacy pages. Literally, as soon as I see her tag a page, I quickly go follow them. Information she learns on webinars and her stories, and her personal financial status. She's very focused on saving for retirement, even recently increasing her family's 401k contribution in order to max that out for 2020. Let me just say, you'd be hard pressed to find someone as supportive and encouraging on social media, and not just on her posts, but also in her DMs. I'm so excited to introduce you to Soledad from Wealth para Todos. So, joining.
Thank you, Norma.
It took like 2 minutes to put together because that honestly came from inside. I know if I ever have a question or if I'm ever feeling down, you're the first one that's gonna share something, type something, comment on something, and I really, really appreciate it.
Yay.
So how did you discover this community on Instagram?
Good question. I started my debt-free journey May 2019. My personal account. I wanted to become debt-free by 33. And we had about $23,000 in student loan debt. And my birthday's in September. So
Happy belated.
Thank you. I paid off my student loans by 33. And on my personal account, I posted saying we're debt-free. And nobody said congratulations, felicidades. It was silence.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, huh? Okay. And I was
nobody cares.
Happy. Yeah. And I had found out from Brown and Green blog, had started following me first on my personal account. So through her, I learned about Chicana Budgeter. And from her, I learned about Investing Latina. And from her, I learned about zero-based budget. And so I just kind of thought, I just thought those were individuals. I didn't even understand that there was this whole community. Mm-hmm. And that was on my personal finance page. And then I kept talking about money on my personal page and nobody would respond on my stories. Nobody, it was dead, except the people that I had named, right? Mm-hmm. And so Investing Latina was the one who said to me, well, why don't you create your own personal finance page? Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And so I started, I slept on it for a while because I was, nerviosa. I was like, oh, well, what am I going to put out there? What should it look like? Mm-hmm. I think I have a desire to be a graphic designer or deeply or something. Cause I really cared how, what is this going to look like? And it took a while. My husband was like, oh, you need a logo and you need a this. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to, and I was originally Generational Wealth para Todos. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I went with Antonio bold font because my abuelito Antonio, my kids are both Antonios. My dad is Antonio. My brother's Antonio. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with that font and that's how it's going to be. And I'm going to learn as I go. Mm-hmm. And quickly I started to find people who were following me. And I was like, oh, there's a whole community. And then I started using the debt-free community. And it's just been great. It's been great to connect and be able to talk about money because in my personal life, nobody wants to talk about money. No one wants to talk about money. So I'm constantly looking, I love reading this stuff. I love learning about it. I want to tell everybody about it. And my loved ones don't want to hear it. So I go to Wealth para Todos, which is first thing in the morning. I'm like, oh, look what I learned. Here's what I'm sharing, because it's no one else wants to hear it.
Well, what's funny is that when I post stuff on Facebook, and Facebook is I don't know, I have maybe 400 or 500 friends. Everybody I know personally. That's how I keep my Facebook. I share a lot about my kids there and just, silly things oh, I don't know, I had coffee, whatever, stupid things. But when I share stuff about money on my Facebook, crickets. When I actually, I take that back, because if my friend Becky hears this, she's going to kill me. My friend Becky always comments and shares. Always. I may have 2 people that comment on and share, even when I put stuff about my podcast on Facebook. But I post on Instagram, and it's a completely, and not just Instagram, but the Check Your Money page on Instagram, not my regular Instagram, but this, the financial page. And this is where you get, and you and I had talked about this a second ago. I posted something today about Elvest, and you immediately said, what's the expense ratio? And I'm like, oh, like no one else would have asked me that. No one on my page would have asked me that. Now, I need to know if there's a Carlos font, because at my son's baptism, there's my son, my father, my uncle, their godfather, my other uncle. There were about 6 or 7 Carloses, 20 people at my son's baptism.
That's funny that you say that, because in my life, I've dated 3 Carloses.
Really?
Yeah.
I was always Alex, like as a younger Alex. So when I met my husband, okay, we're going off topic, but when I met my husband, I said, what's your name? He said, Alex. I said, of course it is.
How funny.
Okay. So what's your money story? How did you grow up watching? What did you grow up seeing your parents do with money? Did they even talk about it? I know you and I, early on when we first started talking, we talked about how your dad wasn't too happy about you sharing like so specific numbers. So, my parents are the same. My mom's big on, oh, don't go crying poverty to people. So what did you grow up watching with them?
They didn't talk about money. My father never talked about money. What was very clear about my dad was, you are going to work to make your own money. Everything was always about work and earn it, work and earn it. My mom, she is a very generous person. So she would like help other people, but sometimes at the expense of her own personal finances. And she was very comfortable with having credit card debt. And I don't know if she would describe herself as saying that she was comfortable having credit card debt. For her, she probably thought like, well, I had to, she was a single mom, that she had no other choice. But I think it's because she didn't think about having an emergency fund. And for her, the idea of like, if money is like, you have it, you use it. There's no reason for you to hoard it. So having an emergency fund was considering like just hoarding money. And for me to be in a place that I, have a 6-month emergency fund and it's saved, and it's not, I don't think of that as my money. I don't think of that as a surplus. I don't think of that as spending money. I don't think of that as a vacation money. Like, that's just 6 months for an emergency.
It doesn't exist.
Right. And I think for a lot of people in my circle, that's like, oh, well, you're rich. You're rich because you have a 6-month emergency fund. And I'm like, I think we're all rich in different ways, but it's the way that I keep myself from being in financial stress, that emergency fund, but like for my growing up, that was not something I was exposed to. My mom did teach me how to write a check. I had family who said I should never have a credit card because it was going to result in credit card debt. I still got a credit card at 19. I had read like Susie Orman's books at 19. So I never dealt with any consumer debt ever in my life. I never paid.
Wow.
Yeah. Like one time, like when my grandfather died, I didn't pay my bill on time. And that caused me to like pay like, I think $11 in interest. And I was like, oh my God, because that was the only thing I knew. That was the only thing I knew. Like what had stuck with me was avoid interest, right? But I wasn't looking, and that's because I read a book at 19. So I knew to avoid like that negative interest, but I didn't know about how to make interest work for me. I didn't know about that. I do remember like putting my money in a CD for a while, and back then like you can get like CDs for like 5%, 6%, which is like unheard of nowadays. and that being a thing. But yeah, I grew up pretty financially illiterate. My grandmothers are pretty frugal. So they've always been like very proud of me and the way I am with my money. But I think for my parents, they think it's locura.
Mm-hmm.
Because for them, they're like, you know, we came to the United States so that you can have this, you know,
Stuff.
more. So you can
Stuff.
have more.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're minimalists, and we became minimalists like 3 years ago. So even
Mm-hmm.
then, it's really weird that I tell them like, don't buy the kids presents for a birthday, for Christmas. Like, this is a list. You don't need to buy them every time you go somewhere. Like, or even like something as simple as cobijas. Like, everyone's always trying to send us cobijas because they're like, oh, you need a blanket. And I'm like, yeah, but everyone, like, I don't need 10 blankets. But like these are the fights that I get into with my family, because también like they like to crochet,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, and then like the idea is like if someone makes something for you, they want you to keep it forever, and then I'm like,
I can't fit it all in the closet.
So yeah, that's my money story.
Oh man, it's funny because credit card debt is normal, and at least from what I witnessed, and for me that taught me that I mean I for a while thought credit card debt was normal too, and it wasn't really until, you know what, to be honest, I would say part it was the community, but part it was COVID, because my thing was always doing the balance transfers. So, you know, we were talking about interest. I'm like, oh, my debt doesn't cost me anything. So I'll just keep moving it and moving it and moving it. Well, then COVID happened and I had a thing that was expiring and nobody was offering me anything for like the first time ever. And I'm like, oh my God, wait, I gotta pay this. And I finally just like, now I'm on actually I just made my 3 out of 4 plans I had. I paid yesterday, the third one. I got one left. So by February, I'll finally be consumer debt, like free. But that's not something, you know, like, you know, and I'm going to just, you know, put my mom's business out there. My mom just uses her credit card like it's her paycheck. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't want to be 60, I forgot, 2 years old and have all this debt. Like, I want to have that money, you know, to move forward, not to be constantly paying back the diner and all the other silly things that I spent. Because that's what that was, vacations and food.
I always tell my loved ones, do not come to me complaining about paying taxes if you're fine paying interest on your credit cards and on your car loans. You're okay giving the big banks and all these companies your money, but you don't want to give, you know, government money. And so then like, they're like, no te voy a decir nada.
So do you feel that what you witnessed growing up kind of shaped your mentality on money at all? Or did you just like, you read that book and then you just kind of started your own thing after that? Like your own, you know, opinions on it?
I think it shaped me in the sense that I was like, I know I'm going to do things differently than my mom. And yet at the same time, there's some things like I've always budgeted for giving, charity, or like giving. Like that's a big part of my budget. And I think I get that from my mom. To learn to put not like restrictions or boundaries, or like to literally budget on how much I'm going to give to others versus just always giving it freely. That's something that I struggled with our budget. And I think I got that from my mom. But other than that, I knew like I was going to avoid credit card debt. I knew that I always wanted to have an emergency fund. And I was a natural saver. Like even my mom says that when I was a little girl, like I would hide like money in purses. And I wanted to have money because it gave me a sense of financial security and financial independence since I was very young. I loved going to the panaderia and I had the money to choose whatever I wanted. My grandfather used to give us $1 every time and I wouldn't use all my dollar. And my brother and my sister would always use all of their money, sometimes ask me for more, and I would buy something, then save the rest. Or even like being at Chuck E. Cheese, we were given money for tokens, and I was like, I'm not going to spend all the money on tokens. And first, before even playing games, I'm going to look at the prizes and be very strategic about like what my goal is. Like, what prize do
$8
I
for a
want?
Laffy Taffy.
Yeah. What prize do I want? How are we going to work together to get enough tickets? You know, like my mind always kind of thought a little long-term and delayed gratification. I think that's something that comes pretty natural to me.
Okay. Now you just said something that kind of got in me, and I know I've seen you post about this before and comment on it before, but the saving, you know, having this budget to others.
Yeah, so we have a loved one emergency fund.
That's what it was.
We have our emergency fund that's for 6 months, and then we also save $200 a month that we put into a loved one emergency fund, and that's for our family members and loved ones who need help, right? My husband is first gen, the first person in his family to be born here in the United States, first person in his family to have like the career that he has, right? He has a 6-figure income, and he grew up in the projects. His mom still lives in the projects, right? So it's like something that we feel responsible for. It's not just our own personal finances, it's like helping out our loved ones. And some of my closest friends had their children very young, like at 20. So their financial situation looks a lot different than mine when I had my kids at 28, after I had gone to college and got a master's, right? And at the end of the day, like I always wanted money, but it wasn't just because I wanted money for myself. It's because I knew that I could help our loved ones. And so when COVID happened and one of my comadres lost her job, I told her, don't worry. Like if you need help, we have this emergency fund. And we created the emergency fund because we also knew like the goal is to always keep $5,000 in there. And when we have loved ones who, you know, stuff happens with their cars or, you know, things happen, it's like, oh, here's this money. We have a policy that we do not let anyone borrow money without the intention of like if they never pay it back, it's like, it's okay. We're not going to hold it against them, right? And they'll say like, oh, let me borrow. And we are, in our minds, it's like, we're giving you this money. So we never let anyone have money unless we know that we can give it to them completely. And yeah, that's just part of it.
And it's funny because I was going to ask that, like, do you expect to get it back?
And sometimes people have, and sometimes people don't. And like when it comes to our mothers, we never expect them to give us money back.
Wow. I like that. All right. So investing. You recently, it was sometime last week, and I was about to board a plane. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh, I got to comment on this really fast and let her know that we really need to talk about this. But there were some really detailed posts that you had put up about investing and about tax saving. And that's where I had comment, you know, I had sent you that message. Like, don't forget forget about the HSAs. So actually I have a 2-part question. How much time do you spend getting all this information? Because a lot of it is definitely stuff that we all maybe know, like, you know, as part of the community. I don't want to say, you know, everyone, obviously, because we are helping others learn this. But how much time do you spend really just kind of getting this newfound knowledge? And what have you learned about investing that has just blown your mind?
Every day I wake up and I either try to read for 30 minutes or work on a course for an hour. Like first thing I do, like I wake up, I use the restroom, I get water, my vitamins. Okay. So it's like the 3rd or 4th thing I do, but then I just get back in bed and I read and I try to learn something. And my goal is always to try to learn something so that I could share something. So, and then I also read at night too. So I would say it's about 2 hours consistently. But on a good week, I mean, like I used to be a teacher, right? So like I love learning. On a good week, I could probably spend like 4 hours a day just reading.
Wow.
And
now, I just want to interrupt you really quick so that everybody knows you are married and you have a child.
2.
So you're,
Two, okay. But I'm also like, I've been very privileged because I don't have, haven't worked since March of 2019. I was on
okay.
disability from March 2019 to September 2019. And then I was just focused on my kids, and then the pandemic happened.
Mm.
And I think, I have my different ways of soothing myself. One of them is food. I get a lot of comfort from emotional eating. And then the other one is learning. And one of them doesn't cost me so much in the long term. So I'm trying to focus more on learning as a way to just like bring joy into my life.
Hmm. So if you budget your time correctly, there is time to do all of the things that you enjoy and that you have to get done, like dinner and, the virtual learning. For
I don't cook. That's another thing that saves me time.
you
I
don't
never
cook?
cook. I never ever cook. Like, it's funny because my husband took my kids, was taking my kids to New York City to visit family once, and my eldest was gonna stay with me. And the first thing he told his father was like, "But what am I gonna eat? I can't eat cereal every day." And then I was like, "Yes, you can. We'll get like 3 different brands. Like, you'll be okay." And everyone
Three
was
different
like,
brands.
"Yeah," because I was like, you can't have like cinnamon toast crunch. I always say like that's dessert, and then Cheerios, that's a little healthier. But like bran cereals, like that's the healthiest. So we start breakfast with an all fiber cereal, have a little not so sweet, whatever, and you can have dinner like sweets. And everyone was like, "Don't worry, vamos a traer comida. No te preocupes." Yeah. And then I was like, I'll just budget. I'll just budget for, eating out.
Hmm. So budgeting, you track pretty insanely. Like you are so diligent about tracking. And sometimes I laugh to myself because I want you to talk about this as well, but you have what's called a no spend day. And I know my sister's not gonna know what a no spend day is. She's about to learn. But you have what's called a no spend day. And I'm like, I think she just does the no spend day so she doesn't have to track what she spends.
For sure. That's the whole reason why I was like, oh, no spend days, because I'm a natural spender. And
Mhm.
I know we started talking about investing. And for me, like budgeting is what allowed me, tracking my spending allowed me to become more mindful and conscious around my spending because I'm a natural spender. I will go out and, oh, there's a frutero. There's, like whatever I see, I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. That was always my natural instinct. And if my kids are like, oh, I really want to get on this ride, I really want to do things, and it's like I wasn't spending a lot of money, but little by little, it would add up to $200 a week.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't drop $200 to buy myself like shoes, but there I was, little by little, adding up, spending $200. So tracking my spending made me realize that I also spent a lot of money on parking, and I didn't realize how much I was spending on parking. And now I live in LA. I will make sure to look for free parking because I'm trying to avoid the cost of parking. And these are the little things. And tracking my spending made me become aware of what my habits were, to
Mm-hmm.
the point that now I think about, like, compared to a year ago, I go out, and yes, I still have the thought of, oh, that would be a really cute, flowers, or oh, that would be really cute to bring into the house. But I'm like, no. I always say, like, if you really want it, wait. And I tell my kids, if you really want this toy a week from now, we will come back to the store and I will get it for you. And 90% of the time, they forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the toys that they keep remembering, I'm like, okay, we're adding that to your birthday list. We're adding that to your Christmas list. And so we make a plan for it. And by budgeting and tracking my spending is how I finally was able to get to a point where we had a surplus of money. So that surplus first went to paying off debt. Then it went to building a 6-month emergency fund. And now it's going into tax advantaged retirement accounts. So, we started off by maxing out our Roth IRAs,
Okay.
my husband and I, and we started in May 2019. And because of this year, due to COVID, we were
Mm-hmm.
able, the the time period to max out your Roth IRA was extended. So we
Mm-hmm.
actually maxed out our 2019 IRAs and our 2020 IRAs this year. So
Wow.
combined, that's $24,000 that we were able to put towards the Roth IRAs. Once we did that, it was like, okay, now let's max out the 401k. And
Mm-hmm.
that one was yeah. I'm glad you're laughing because
That's the one I want you to talk about.
that's the novela. That was the novela. And it's like funny because I really wanted to go on Instagram and show everybody, thinking I was gonna get so much support. Let's tell the listeners what
Yep.
happened. So my husband was contributing 6% of his paycheck to his 401k. 6% in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Then I said, do you want to max out your retirement account? Yes. Okay. I changed 6% to 53%.
On purpose.
On
It wasn't a
purpose.
fat finger typo thing.
No,
It
no, no,
was
on purpose. And I said, we're going to have this maxed out by October. And he was like, 53%? Soledad, like, what are you thinking? Why does it need to be maxed out by October? Why? And I was like, why? You said you wanted to have it maxed out. I was like, yeah, but it doesn't have to be by October. It could be by December. And I was like, yeah, well, we might as well. He's like, I don't think we could live off of this money. He doesn't do the budgeting. He does, like I said, I'm the chief financial officer in our family. Part of the reason why I track the way I do is like I run our finances like if it's a small little business. And I think about like what are our goals quarterly, what are the things that we're accomplishing. And I used to be a math teacher, so maybe that's why, like, being a stay-at-home mom was like, I needed something else to
need
do.
an outlet.
So I created like this little system. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know. I was like, dude, like, we can totally live off of one of your paychecks a month. He's like, how? And I was like, I've already run the numbers. I already created the budget for it. And he's like, what? Then where does our money usually go to? And I'm like, it went to debt. It went to the emergency fund. It went to the Roth IRAs. I was like, how else do you think, we've been able to reach all these financial goals? It's like, that's money that's there. But he was really upset. He was so upset. He was so annoyed. He like literally every day I would wake up, and before even his first paycheck where they took 53% away, he was just like, oh, I can't wait until it's October. And I was like, if you really want to change it, like, we'll do it at least for September. Let's do it just for September. And after September, 2 paychecks, then I'll adjust it. But let's just do it. And every day he would say to me, I don't even believe in saving for retirement. And I'm like, I know.
So are you on the same page? Is he on the same page?
That every single step of the way, it's new for us, right? Like, no one in our family, no one in our circle is doing any of this. So when I'm reading a book and he'll say like, oh, everyone's like, oh, she read a book, aquí vienen los ideas. And I'm like, okay, you know what? We should be debt free. And everyone's like, what? Why would you want to be debt free? Why put all that stress on yourself? Just pay things little by little. And then I was like, let's just do it. And so then he's like, I don't know, because everyone else in our circle is like, that's crazy. And eventually I convince him. Then I tell him to save 6-month emergency fund. He's like, that's crazy. Why do you need 6 months of emergency? And I was like, because
COVID.
Yeah, 1. 2, I was like, I've read online that before you start investing, you need to have a 6-month emergency fund. Like, it's not like very responsible to go into investing without having, liquid, like cash available to you. And he was like, I don't know, that's crazy. Eventually he's okay with it. When I tried to open up our Roth IRAs, again, he was like, that's so sketchy, Soledad. Because it was no one in our circle was doing it. So it's always for my husband, like sketchy, weird. And then I just have to like press, like continue, like preaching, sending them articles from different sources, telling them like, it's not just this book, it's also an Investopedia, it's also NerdWallet, it's also Next Advisor, it's everywhere. Here's a TikTok, here's an Instagram, here's a like, you know, I just have to bombard them with it to be like, just because for us, first gen, it's not normal, doesn't mean this isn't a way to build wealth in the United States. So the same thing with the 401k, right? So he was against it. He was hating it. He was like, I don't even believe in saving. Like, what do I need money for when I'm 65? And I'm like, I'm still going to be married to you at 65. If you don't know what you need money for, let me tell you, 65-year-old me is going to still need money. So we need to save for that. And he literally would complain about it every day, at least twice a day, all of September. And then when he got his check and he saw that and mind you, he didn't start investing until the age of 32, until 2020. So he's also behind.
Gotta catch up, yeah.
Right. He's also behind in terms of like how much he should have saved, right? And
how much he should. That's when I do my air quotes, should.
Because it all depends.
Yeah.
It all depends on your cost of living, where you live, what your annual expenses are. It's all, it's very individualized, just like, anything else. Personal finance is personal. But with him, now I heard him the other day talking to his coworkers saying like, yeah, dude, you got to max out your 401k. If we get bonuses, you gotta make sure you put that money towards there. And I was like,
where'd you get that from?
But like that's just what I've accepted. That's like our dynamic between us. And so I've just accepted that I know I have to convince them. Okay.
And so would you say that that's the advice you would give, let's just say, to another married couple or, a partnership, when one is on board and one isn't? Because what I just got from what you said was find their way, find the way that that person will accept information and just flood them with it and until they're on board.
I think something that's also very abnormal, and I don't know, like in terms of our circle, my husband and I have always done our finances together. So when we first started, like we got married 10 months after dating. Like fast, right? Wow. When we were first together, like we weren't even married. And I opened up a checking account with his name on it and my name on it. And at that time I was the breadwinner and I was the one paying all of the bills, and so that we could pay our rent. Like we were living together. Like we moved in with each other really quick. So I took care of all of our finances because I made all the money. Right? In the beginning of our relationship for a few years. This is why he was learning how to code. He taught himself how to code.
Oh, okay.
And then he eventually becomes a software engineer and now is like a manager, a software engineer. So he just started making so much more money than me. So much more money. And then it came to the point, like he had his business for a while and I was doing consulting. And so I just always took care of the finances, and that started our relationship like that with me always monitoring our finances and everything being combined. And it had to be combined because in the very beginning, he didn't make any money. Right now, where we are in our lives, I don't make any money. So, but I'm still the one who's managing the finances. And I just think I'm just a lot more detail oriented. But what I was saying is that I don't think that's normal. I think a lot of people actually keep their finances separate. What do you think?
I was married for 17 years. We had a joint account so that I could have to contact the bank if anything happened. So he wouldn't have to do it. He wanted nothing to do with the finances at all. I kept the checkbook, which I still have actually a copy of it, one of my older ones. And what I would do is, so let's just say I went to Kohl's and I would spend $52. I would write that in my checkbook, Kohl's $52. I was as diligent as you back in the day, honestly, like with my checkbook. Like if it was off by 3 cents, I sat there for 3 hours figuring I messed up in my math. I was like neurotic about it. But it helped, like just like you're saying, to be able to track and to make it match and whatnot. Anyway, so if I did something, if I paid the daycare for the kids, I would write that line item in my checkbook and I would put a little asterisk next to it. And so every 2 weeks when he got paid, I would add up all the little, no, that's a lie. I would do it I would write half. And so every 2 weeks when he got paid, I would add them all up. I would divide them in half, and then I would check them all off because I knew like I got my money back basically. So I would front all the expenses and then just take half from him for the joint expenses. So the light.
Everyone I know, that's how they do it.
And that's
everyone I
when
know.
We got
that's
divorced. Man, this man was like, "How do I write a check?"
Well, that's what I tell my husband. That's what I do tell my husband. Like, husband, you need to learn how to do this stuff, because if something happens to me, like you want to, and of course he's like, if something happens to me, I'm not contributing to my retirement. Or like something happens to you, Soledad.
I'm reducing it to 6%.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh Lord, please never let anything happen to me, because this will be like a high earner, and like you wouldn't even know, because yeah.
So what I tell women, I just recently had a conversation with actually someone about your age, as a matter of fact. And, she had said that her husband or her, her person, manages the finances, and she doesn't, she kind of knows what's going on. But what I said to her, well, she actually does know what's going on. But my advice to her was, don't ever put yourself in a position where you don't fully understand, don't fully know what is happening. I'm not saying you need to be hands-on, because if you choose not to be, that's not your thing. You don't want to be, whatever it is, that's fine. But be aware, because if something should happen to your person, you're not going to have the first clue about where things are. I mean, I sometimes wonder, like, I really got to make sure my kids have, I just don't kind of want to have them, let them have it now, but all my passwords. So like I have my list of logins, and red is like my credit card stuff, and green are all my bank accounts. I have money in like 5 different places, because I try out, Elvis, which we were talking about earlier. I try out Elvis. So I'm going to put a little money there and see how they do. I had tried last year, I tried Swell. That was swell until they went on. I got my money back because, the market, whatever, it was fine by the time I had to withdraw the money. But I like to try different things. But even if you don't want to be the person in control, you need to pay attention, because you're going to be so lost if something should happen to that person, or something should happen to the relationship. And I'm all about options. My life has always been about, I need to always have that plan B, that's something going on, like work-wise, or just anything like that. I need to have options. I need to be able to just, okay, I don't like that anymore, I'm going here.
For sure.
It is. And you can't do that if you have no idea what's happening in your finances.
Yeah, I would say that, like, there's no one right way to do your finances.
It's your way.
Yeah, it's your way.
It's personal, like you said.
For you. However, I do think everyone, like, you should have a partner that you feel comfortable talking about your financial goals with. And you should have a partner who's going to support your financial goals. And I'm not saying like with money, but just be like supportive and like, hey, you set a goal of 10 no spend days, and you spend every single day so far. You're going to try to do that. Like I think it's nice to have people around you who are supportive of what your goals are and can be those accountability partners.
Yeah.
So have the conversations, and definitely, like, I think everyone needs to be aware of their 401ks. Like I do, part of the reason my husband and I like take a long time before we actually make a decision is because he is not going to do something that he doesn't understand.
Yep.
And I think that's important, right? Like, yes. Don't agree to something that you don't understand. And we have those conversations, and I have to show him the calculators, and I have to show him everything. And it's like, for me, like, yeah, it's like annoying because it's like, oh, just trust me already. But then it's not annoying because it's like, I wouldn't want to just be expected to do something blind faith, Like, I'm glad he's asking questions. This is how he's going to learn.
And share. So like you said before, he's sharing at work while you're sharing as well. So you're clearly explaining it to him in a way that he's retaining it and able to then, share it with other people.
And he's also just like my best person, because like I'll learn something and sometimes I'll share it with him first, and he'll ask me all these questions so that when I do finally get on Instagram, I'm able to say it in a way already considering all the questions that somebody had,
Mm-hmm.
which allows me to have like less DMs questions,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So you're maxing out the 401k, and we talked about offline, we talked about getting into taxable brokerage accounts. So what's your plan on that?
So this year we did so much. Originally, when I created our budget in January 2020, we were not going to have our 6-month emergency fund until December of 2020. We maxed out our 6-month emergency fund March 2020.
On one salary?
On one salary. A 6-figure salary, you know, like I'm not going to front, but it was because we had goals and we were like, these are the things that we're going to do. So when money came our way, and that's what I always tell people, is like, money is going to come your way. And the reason that we were able to do that in March is we got like a tax refund. We also got, my husband got a bonus. My husband got a raise. And we also had those COVID checks. That was a lot of money that came our way. And when it came our way, old Soledad, who wasn't tracking spending, who wasn't aware of her financial goals, would be like, we're going to Walt Disney World! Family trip! Who wants to come? We're buying your tickets. We'll cover the hotel. Let's go. And these are things that we used to do with our money. We would pay all expense paid trip for our loved ones, because at the end of the day, that's what was bringing us so much joy. That's still something that we want to do. However, we're like, we need to be preparing for our future. So it was like, okay, this money came our way, 6-month emergency fund. Money came our way, Roth IRA. Money came our way, now maxing out the 401ks. So we ended up doing so much more because we had a very specific what our little baby steps were. And something that I spend a lot of time doing is I'm always entering giveaways. I love giveaways. And I'm always entering them. And I always think like, okay, if I win this $10,000, how much of it am I going to have to pay in taxes? How much of it is going to be left? And what am I going to do with that money? And planning ahead of time what I would do with that money. And my husband and I, we talk about these things. And these are the conversations that we're having, like at, like the dinner table. And so when money does come our way, it's like, oh, yay, we're reaching this financial goal a lot sooner. And so for next year, tengo aquí, papeles, right? Like Q4 goals, and I like mark off. No, you guys can't see this. I'm showing Norma, like this little tracker. And so part of Q4 goals is that we know that we're going to have some surplus money. And so where is that going? So we're already thinking about 2021, saving for my husband's Roth IRA for 2021, start saving for mine. And then we set up a plan for 2021 that if he contributes 11% each month, he'll max out his 401k. So it's not like it was before where he was just like contributing what could get matched. Now we're starting in the very beginning of the year with a plan to max it out. So we're not going to have to do a 53% month, right?
Yeah.
In order to max it out. And when we have a surplus of money, which according to my calculations will be in March 2021, we will open up a taxable brokerage account and start investing for property. That's kind of where we're at. Like we're thinking like we're gonna put a house down payment instead of keeping in a savings account. We're gonna put in a taxable brokerage account, which people don't like. When you read everything, that's not something that's recommended. That's something that I'm being called to do. So we'll see.
So you do it. You do it. If that voice is telling you you have to do it, you have to do it. Honestly, and a savings account. I had a lot of money in a savings account, and it wasn't until maybe this year where I realized, or maybe within the last year or so, when I realized that's a savings account as a mattress that I'm not going to get robbed from. That's all it is. You're not what is the interest on a high yield savings account? I think I got my email. It's like 0.6.
right now.
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So between my regular savings and then my CDs, which I do still have a 3% CD, which, you know, I'm going to leave it.
That's good.
That's, you know, that's a little bit safer than the regular mattress of the high yield.
Let's remind everyone listening that inflation is 2 to 3%. So
Mhm.
right now, even keeping your money in a savings account, once it's beyond your emergency fund, you're losing money. You're losing money, and it's why we need to be investing. But I always say, like, start off with those tax advantage accounts first, because it's gonna lower your liability. Like, the only reason that my husband and I are able to contribute to Roth IRAs, one, because there's something called a spousal IRA. Look into it, people. But also because you take, you know, your income, but whatever you put away into a tax advantage account, what your 401k, and depending on your income, it could also be like, there's something called the savers credit. So you could also, if
Yes.
you're really low income, that's also money that reduces your tax liability. So at the end of the day, like, my husband's not getting taxed on his full salary because we've contributed to the 401k. We have an FSA dependent care. We have an FSA for health stuff. So what he has to pay taxes on is significantly less than what he actually made, which is why we want to make sure we're taking advantage of those tax advantage accounts.
So let me just quickly, and I have talked about this on a previous episode, but the savers credit is basically a credit that the government, it's money the government is giving you to save. So if you make under a certain, you have
$39,000 if you're a married couple in 2020.
How much was it?
$39,000.
$39,000. So if you have under that, the government actually rewards you for saving into your 401k. So there's not this, oh, I don't think I make that much money, I can't afford to contribute to my retirement account. You're actually being incentivized to do so, you know, with this tax credit. So that's one thing. The other thing is the HSA and the FSA. So the HSA is for when you've got your benefits. I just started it this year, actually. And I struggled with deciding whether I wanted to do it. I was really scared because one of my kids she had a little cut on her finger, and she went again the other day, and I was like, oh.
We also had to make a decision between FSA and HSA this year, and we knew for us, HSA was not going to work because we do use our health insurance a lot. And our deductible, to use an HSA, you have to, you know, pay a higher deductible. So we had to think, do we have the money for the high deductible plus the money that we can to, like, max out or, you know, put into the HSA for investing, and then money on top that we're not going to use it, because that's how I would want to use an HSA, like, just as pure, like, investing, and still have money on the side to actually pay for our expenses. And we just didn't have that money. Yeah.
So
maybe in the future.
it's higher deductible, lower premium. So it's good if you're the type of person or family that doesn't go to the doctor that much. The way Benefits explained it to me, though, it's also good if you go like crazy amount because you have a cap. And then on top of that, you're allowed to save a very high, I think it's like $6,000 or $7,000.
Yeah, it depends on, like, whether you're a family or like a single person.
And you save that in what's called an HSA. So it's another investment account. So once you go over a certain amount.
And it's great to be investing in that account. It covers only health costs, but that's, you know, when you're older.
Forever.
Yes.
So if you leave your job or your job leaves you, you get to keep that account. If you have a regular FSA, you don't get to keep that account. It's use it or lose it, first of all, by the end of the year. There may be that $500, I think, that you can roll into the following year, but it may depend on the company, if I'm not mistaken. But on top of that, if you don't budget correctly and you don't use it, it's gone. And if you leave the job, it's gone. Say you can keep forever and use it for medical and all that other stuff, which is great. And then there's the FSA for dependent care, which is another way that you can reduce your taxable income as well, which is, and it's not that,
Maximum $5,000.
yeah, it's 5,000. I have friends that would max that out by February. But
Yep.
you know what? It's still free money. It's still, money that's not being taxed. And you can definitely have some tax benefits there. So that's all great ways of reducing your taxable income.
And full transparency to everyone listening, 2020 was the first year that I took advantage of all these things. We had employers in the past who offered FSA dependent care. We had employers in the past who had, the FSA for medical costs. We had employers in the past who did HSAs. We had employers who offered employer retirement plans. And we didn't know. We didn't know. So if you're just hearing this for the first time, it's okay you didn't know. Now you know, though. Now you know.
Yep, exactly. And I think that what happens is you have those meetings, and I mean, for us, it's the end of the year. You have those meetings in November or whenever your open enrollment is. You have that hour, you go right back to your desk, go right back to, your job function. And then you have the deadline, and then it's the deadline day and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll just take this. I'll do it last year. And you really need to take the time to read through the benefits. My company is actually really good. We've got the legal assistance one. So I pay like $400 a year and I can use a lawyer for whatever I want. Estate planning,
Wow.
like I did my will, I did a trust, I did everything with that. Somebody gets a ticket, all of that is included in that $400 that you pay for the year. But if you're not going through it, you're not taking that, couple of hours, because honestly, it will take you time. We're not going to lie. It's not, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. You need to take the time to read through it, to understand it, to ask questions. Benefits will help you, but they're not going to help 1,000 people in this room or in this Zoom meeting. So if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to your benefits person if you don't have somebody in a circle that you feel comfortable asking questions on, because there's so many ways to save money and to minimize, your taxable income that people don't really understand, so they don't do it, and they're losing out. So recently you started you did every single day from what, September 15th? We're still on it, huh?
Yes.
The Latinx Heritage Month. So
Yes.
you chose to spotlight a financial literacy page every single day for a month. What inspired you to do that, and how much are you loving it? Because I know you are.
What inspired me is always the fact that when I joined the debt-free community, and I used to follow the hashtag debt-free community, I did not see people that I could relate to, right? So it was white, a black person, whoo, yay! Like I would, like a lot of times I like as a person of color, like, any person of color, they don't even have to be, Latina like me, right? Like they don't have to be Mexican. They don't have to be like, if they're Latino, yay. If they're Asian, yay. Any person of color, when I see them, I'm like, yay, keep shining. Because when you shine, we all shine. And so even following that hashtag debt-free community was something that I was like, Or in memes. When I first started my account, I was doing pure memes. And I wanted to only do memes with people of color. And so if you look at my page and like the old posts, it was only people of color that were on my memes, because I thought representation matters. And I remember saying like, are there other Latinos? Are there other Latinos? And part of the reason why my handle was bilingual, because I was hoping that people would right away be like, oh, she's Latina. And then we'd be able to connect, and they would follow me because of that. And that's what I was really looking for. I was looking for people who I could relate to. Like there were also Latinos, there were also like had grown up low income, first gen, who cared about political issues and social justice issues, who were like, understanding that by us, having money, that, that affects politics and who we can elect based on like who we put into office. And I was looking for those people. I was looking for my group of people. I wanted to find, like I in my life, I have a diverse group of friends. I have my Latino friends, I have my Black friends, I have my Asian friends. Like I have that. But then from them, it's like, okay, well, which of you also feel passionate about Black Lives Matter, children in cages, LGBTQ rights. Okay, so then the group starts to narrow little by little. And then which of you, all of that, also feel passionate about personal finance? So at the end of the day, it's like just a little group. So online, I've been able to find like other people who have those same types of passions. And I wanted to make sure that one, I would have them on my page because it would remind me to like, oh, if I only have 30 minutes, let me check in on my 30 people. You know, so it's like quickly, it's very linkable. I also wanted to organize their posts on my page, like some of my favorite posts, and just have that accessibility. I have it like organized. And I just wanted other people too, like I use that hashtag debt-free community. So if anyone else is following the debt-free community and you're like, oh, wait, what? There's other Latinos here? Then they start to follow too. And there's some people who changed their names after they saw my Wealth para Todos. They made their accounts a lot more specific to their identity because they wanted to find other people that, you know, they could relate to in that way. How much fun am I having? It's just so great. Like every day is like, it takes me about an hour to do the post, like to create the little Canva, that's fast, but to go through the posts and look at my saved things and seeing like which are the posts that I've saved and the captions, it just makes me so happy. Like I get so much joy seeing other people reach their financial goals. Like it gives me, like, it makes me so happy. And so when I get to see the goals that they've accomplished, the goals they're hoping to accomplish. I also love reading. So one of my favorite things is everyone sharing their favorite book. And I'm like, at the end, I know I'm going to do a post about like the books that everybody recommended. The most popular one so far is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And yeah, I'm already thinking like, I'm going to have to do this again for Black History Month.
Yeah. It's funny because when I go through them and I told you the first thing I really do, I'm not kidding, is I go to follow, even when I'm on your stories, I immediately click on the link. I got to follow them before I even read what she has to say about them. Hopefully it's good because I'm already going to hit follow. And what I'm finding is, I don't think there was maybe there was one or two people that I wasn't already following. So while you're right, there is like 30 people, you know what I mean? The community is really not that big, but it's also expanding. I know I recently stumbled upon a page, and I don't know if it was you who posted it or one of our other, fellow people. And they only had 3 posts so far. I'm like, oh, they're new. Yay.
I know.
And I think I saw an Ecuadorian flag. I'm like, oh, Latina. Yay.
Yeah, I know.
I was so excited.
And my first follower ever was Investing Latina, who has grown so much.
Yes.
Economicats.
Yes.
She was one of my first followers to love her. And Miss Be Helpful.
Yes.
Be Helpful also was one of my first followers, and she actually helped me out on one of my posts. Like she corrected me on one of my posts, like in my DMs, so nicely. And I remember just like I found out about Mrs. Be Helpful after she had followed me, and then I was like, oh my God, she's like has this huge YouTube following. She's been out here discussing personal finance, has talked at FinCon. She's like everywhere in these presentations. And she was like, your husband's Dominican. I'm Dominican. Like, of course I was going to follow. So it's funny how we're all connecting like that. And then also even the Black personal finance community too. Like, I love seeing them, and I love seeing how they're shining too. And there's someone called Asian on a Budget. Love their account. I'm like,
I don't know. That one doesn't sound familiar.
matters.
I got to check.
Yeah. So,
I have to check. So you're definitely very passionate about issues, and you actually recently took a little bit of a sabbatical. I missed you. I was worried. I was like, I should have got her number. I hope she's okay. How did that feel to take that break?
So I've taken two. I
Okay.
took one in, I believe it was in June. It was 18 days, and it was the midst of everything that happened with George Floyd. We
Mm.
had here in LA our uprisings. We had, what are they called? You know, the tanks paroling the streets of
Yeah, I
LA.
know what you're talking about.
It was also dealing with the pandemic. My mom used to help me take care of my kids. And when the pandemic happened, my sister had just had a newborn, so she hasn't been able to help. So we've really been like, I feel like for the first time in our lives, really raising our kids. And we felt like a village. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this. And it's like, when my husband's like, well, you're going to have to do it. Like, you have to do it. There's no turning back now. You can't just like take it back. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do this. There's no way. And then for a while, I was trying to like approach parenting as like a classroom, nothing. Like I went through so many phases. So it was hard. And, you know, my husband is Dominican. He's Black. And we deal with stuff all the time with our own little Karens, even living in Los Angeles. And so
Mm.
it's triggering when we see the stuff that happens in the news. And it scares us. It makes us have conversations about like our children, what we would do in similar situations, and it's just very heavy. And I have to take my break because every once in a while I'm like, why isn't everyone else so upset about this? And I know it's just like, and those times is because I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so tired. Um, that I'm looking for like other people to kind of like hold you up. But at the end of the day, like we are responsible for our own well-being. So when I take these breaks, it's just so that I can center myself again and remind myself like the number one person I'm responsible for is myself, then my little family, then my extended family. Then I can be in a position where I then share what I'm learning with other people outside of, you know, my little family. That's a blessing. That's not something that should, if it's not gonna add value to my life, if it's not gonna bring joy, then I will stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I took that first break and it was 18 days, I thought like, do I really have something to keep giving? Is there something I still want to share? And it took me a while to respond. And then 2 weeks later, again, I always ask myself, do I have within myself the energy, the emotional capacity to still give? And when I finally get to the point when I've rested enough, when I've taken a break and I'm like, yeah, not only do I need to do this, then I come back and I'm like ready. And I also have to remind myself that the work that we do is done collectively. So all of us who are so passionate about personal finance, it's like it's all of our work collectively that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna make a difference. And so we can each take a break. We could each rest. It's necessary for our well-being and the sustainability for everything that we're passionate about. And not just in personal finance, but every, you know, social justice issue. It's the long run. Like this is just what we're dealing with forever.
Yeah, and I think that what's one of the more important things about that community is that we do lift each other up. I've never seen a snarky response or sassy, and I'm known to be sassy and snarky, but we all just support each other. And like you said, Miss Be Helpful, you know, sent you a DM and just, you know, lightly corrected you, you know, so we don't just look at it and go, oh, she's so wrong, and just keep swiping. No, we're like, hey, girl, you know,
Yes, like
so you forgot about this.
I've dealt with my snarky stuff, and
I haven't
I
seen it.
remember. Oh, that was in the very, very beginning. Like, you know, there's people who get very, you know, like if they're following some personal finance path, right? Like if
Mm,
they have their personal finance guru and that's their way, and then you're talking about doing something a different way, then in the beginning I would get comments about that. And I would just always just feel like personal finance is personal. You know, at the end of the day, what matters most. But like some people, and then I was just like, and then I've also had like people make comments about like the fact that I have mixed couples. So when I talk about like married couples, it's not just like heteronormative. I
Mm-hmm.
also have like my lesbian couples and my gay couples, and people have commented on that too. And I'm just like, you don't have to follow me, boo boo.
I remember that, to stay 6 feet apart from me.
Yes, 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 exactly. Like those are the kinds of things that I'm just kind of like, like I know, like my husband always tells me, Soledad, you shouldn't be so political if you want to grow your audience. I'm like, I don't care to grow an audience. I care to grow a community.
Yes.
I want my people. That's what I'm looking for. Like people that I can relate to, people that I can talk to. I um I remember when I reached 200 followers and I was like, just call me J-Lo from now on, because basically I have 200 people who are like so cool, and we talk about dinero, and we have like care so much about these social justice issues. I'm like, that's it. That's it. I am good. And I
And
like
now you got like
posted.
3,000.
Mhm. But like I also like saw that like something I had to actively decide to do was consistently share what
Mm-hmm.
my personal values were, because literally after every post that's like my personal values, boom, lose 100. And I was like, okay, it's time to clean house. That's what I say. Because people start
Really?
to follow, and then it's just like, wait a minute, we didn't know you were all about that too. And I say repeatedly, like, there are personal finance pages that will keep it just about dinero. For me, I'm so passionate about us increasing our wealth so that we can help our most marginalized people. So if that's like, if you're just out here trying to get rich to get rich, I'm like, that's basic to me. But to be able to build wealth so then you could really help and make a difference in your community, no, that makes you my gente.
Yeah. And a more well-rounded person. You're
Maybe
not
like
just about that
it's
one thing.
interesting. Like I told you all, like I guess it's like with the pandemic that I'm in this bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like I'm here in my house with my family, my loved ones, and then on my online community, I have this group of people that have like very similar values as me, and then you step out and you're like, wait a minute. Some of you still think it's taboo to talk about money? Like what? That we do that every single day, 6 times a day, or like, wait, what? You don't think that the like wealth, generational wealth has been impacted by systemic forms of racism? No way. And then you're like, oh, okay, there's still some people out there who think that.
I saw something recently about that, and somebody was like, oh, they were talking about real estate. And it was real estate. I can't remember whose post it was, but it was real estate related. And somebody was like, I'm in the field. Racism doesn't exist. I laughed so hard. And I'm not saying I pull the race card often,
Uh-huh.
but to sit there and be naive and say, oh, wait, the person said there are laws. It doesn't exist. And they're like, okay, so why are there so many people in jail if there are laws?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know.
Some
It's
people.
interesting. It's interesting. And I see it all the time, like on other people's posts. Her first 100K did a
Mm-hmm.
post
Oh, maybe it was
the
hers. I don't know.
about the undocumented immigrants, how
Mm-hmm.
they pay more taxes than our president.
Yes,
And
I saw that.
someone said unfollowing. They just commented unfollowing. And
Shit.
she said, this ain't a airport. You don't need to announce your departure. And I was like, clap, yes, go. And there's also people outside of the personal finance world that I've also learned in terms of how they set their boundaries, to just, protect their well-being,
Yeah.
And I'm also trying to really like, I feel like I've grown a lot more in being able to hold space for people who have different opinions. Like on that social distancing post that I did, somebody commented on that and said like, that's so disgusting or whatever. And I was like, oh, what do you think is disgusting? And trying to like actually have conversations. But I
Mm-hmm.
know I can only engage in that when I'm not emotionally overwhelmed. So that's why I have to always make sure that I'm, sleeping and meditating and doing my own like self-care practices so that I can
And
show
have
up
that
and
balance.
actually have a place to give.
Yeah, and had that balance.
Mhm.
Can do that. So books, you had mentioned one before, from all the posts. What books do you recommend for someone looking to expand their knowledge and doesn't want to be on Instagram?
Okay, my go-to book is definitely The Simple Path to Wealth in terms of investing.
Hmm.
It it really made me more confident in terms of choosing index funds and understanding why to choose like low cost index funds. I also like Broke Millennials Guide to Investing. That was
Hmm.
pretty comprehensive. I mean, like once you start reading books, you kind of see like everyone's talking about the same best practices.
Hmm.
But I also think it's important to have your foundation in place. So right now, I'm in a place where I'm like, yay, total investing. But if you look back in May or even, yeah, no, like around March, I remember writing things like, one day I want to know all those fancy words like stocks and bonds, and I didn't know,
Yeah.
I just didn't know. And it seemed so foreign, so scary. So I found that for myself, and if you're also somebody who's just so scared of it all, and it's normal to be scared, if you're the first person in your family, if you're the first person in your circle who's going out there to start investing, um, and doing that kind of work, I find that just like reading books, listening to podcasts, and just hearing, watching YouTube videos, and just allowing it to like come into your mind allows you to get more confidence in learning about this stuff, and also trusting it, right? Because you want to hear it not only from like one person that you relate to, but I even like hearing the stuff from like people I don't relate to, people that I'm not supportive of, when they're
Hmm.
also talking about like, yeah, invest in low cost index funds. I'm like, okay, so now we know that this is a thing that we all need to do, because even the people that I don't like are also talking about this,
Yeah.
so that book, and if you don't want to be on Instagram, get on Twitter.
Because our circles, I mean, especially if you're following the community and you're listening to this podcast, you clearly want this information. You
Right.
probably never had it before. Maybe you are reading the books, maybe you are reading the articles, and you don't have anybody to bounce an idea off of. And that's what, and that's what the joke then get on Twitter, or I don't know about Facebook. Facebook, I don't know. Nobody's really
Yeah, I don't really do Facebook, but definitely like Instagram. I feel like we have a good little group there,
Mhm.
and find us and we'll hook you up. We'll tell you who all the cool people are, and they're gonna hype you up. It's like, it's, I share every time I say my village grows by 500. I always do these giveaways because one, I love giveaways. I love participating in giveaways, but my giveaways aren't like, oh, you have to follow me or
Like,
tag
share,
somebody.
tag
Yeah,
three people.
no, because I personally I like the easy giveaways that just give me your email. I'm like, sure. Sure, here you go. So I do these giveaways because I just think like I've made so much progress because I have a group of people who hold me accountable, a group of people who I can talk to
Hmm.
about my money questions, a group of people who cheer me on, who like, will pray, like, little heart emoji or high five emoji
Hmm.
or,
The
fist bump
hands.
emoji. Yeah. Preach emoji. And I know that part of the reason why we've made so much progress this year is because of that village, of that community, the circle, whatever you want to call it. So
Mhm.
there's no reason to do this alone. You don't have to.
And I think what's important to just reiterate is the fact that you've done this all in about a year and a half. And you're
And for me, it's like, it's funny because I think of it like, oh, it took so long. But then it's like, no, I guess it didn't.
no, some people spend their whole adult lives trying to figure it out. You tried to figure it out and then figured it out like pretty much right away.
Well, like full transparency
Yeah.
again, I think that I first started looking into budgeting when I had my first child in 2014. And I
Hmm.
started tracking my spending back then in 2014, 6 years, before. And I was starting to learn again about about personal finance the way I had learned when I was 19. And then my grandfather died, and I got so sad and overwhelmed with my grief that I ended up spending like $10,000 of money that we had saved up. Yeah.
That's exactly how much I said. So now I put in my will. I was with the kids this weekend, and we were talking about my will because they like to ask about this stuff. I don't know. I should be careful. But I said, I have a trust, and you get a certain amount of money when I die, and a certain amount at this age, and a certain amount at this age, and a certain amount for a wedding, and a certain amount. But you get $10,000 of sad money. What's sad money? I'm like, that's how much I went into debt when my dad died. And that's how much I'm not gonna let you go into debt. You take your 10,000.
Interesting.
What you buy?
Well, now, like, that's something that a sinking fund. Then we need a safe sinking fund for that. A $10,000 grief fund. You know what? Actually, that's really smart. My abuelas, they're getting older. They're getting older, and that's something that I think about a lot. Like, how will I handle another, another heartache? How will that impact my finances? Like, at the end of the day, we're not robots. Like, we all want to say like, oh, just live below your means, invest the rest, stay consistent. Well, the hardest thing is staying consistent when you're dealing with a bunch of shit around you. So it's okay. That's why the community comes to play, right? Because there will be people who will hold space for you when you're struggling, and then hype you up.
And like you said, that was the one time where you were late on a payment and ended up paying interest, because you do get into, I don't even want to check my mail. I check my mail. I don't care what gets paid, what doesn't get paid. I'm sad.
Yeah.
And that's
life happens.
So
life happens.
Absolutely. And you just plan for it. Plan for the unexpected, I guess. So what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
I would tell my 20-year-old self that the machista, patriarchal, consumer, capitalist culture that you were raised in is not a reflection of your values. So don't be afraid to speak up against them. Follow your heart. You don't have to marry him to live with him. You don't have to make dinner for him. You don't have to clean the house. You're not going to be able to do it all. Like, you can't don't put all these pressures on yourself. You don't need to buy something in order for it to bring value. Like, it doesn't increase your worthiness. You are already worthy. You are already whole. And society has come up with different values. It doesn't matter if they're not your values. Just own your values and walk and spend according to those values.
Okay, that was deep. I don't have any tissues. That was so deep.
I know, I have a deep side. Once somebody asked me, someone asked me that same question, and I was like, I remember I said something like, treat your money like you treat your cuckoo. No te meten en tu cuckoo. You know that song? So today you got a deep version of me.
I can't. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. I loved chatting with you. I want to tell everybody, you were talking about the giveaways. You have very graciously always posted that if anybody wants to tag you for a giveaway,
yes,
the people that will not roll your eyes when you see that come up as a notification. So if there's a giveaway and you need to tag a bunch of people, well,
tag me and I will always comment, may you win. I comment on everyone who enters, tags me to something.
And also we did mention, it may sound a lot of inside stuff, but we did mention a lot of different pages. Just all you need to remember is Wealth para Todos. Go there and just scroll through her page. You'll find more people than you'll ever want to follow. All you'll see is money coming up on your feed, and you're gonna feel right at home. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Norma.
I appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.